Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First question this morning is from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. And Mike says, morning, everyone. What does the panel think of the newly released Elgato Stream Deck? And he's got a link to the new product.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, they have released a new Stream Deck that has switched from membrane type of switches to scissor switches. It's I would assume, I haven't tried it yet, of course, but I would assume it would be a good upgrade over the current Stream Decks, but it's still quite underwhelming. I would assume it would be quite underwhelming compared to professional button panels that you'd find in broadcast infrastructure and then broadcast trucks. They tout 1.2 millimeters of travel on the buttons, which is minuscule compared to what you would have in traditional button panels, where you get 3, 5, 7, sometimes even 10 millimeters of travel. So you get a nice clunk on it instead of they're comparing their new buttons to buttons you would find on laptops. That's not satisfying for me for a button panel. But I assume it would still be a good upgrade.
Yeah, I think that travel is my number one complaint about Stream Decks, is just that I just don't have as much confidence in it. Next question. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. Sorry.
Elgato announced 3 things, and the scissor keys. I was looking at them. They're going to be metal as opposed to plastic inside of the buttons. So that's going to be a little bit better. But you got to watch out, because if you expose it to the elements, you might start feeling a rusty key click from there. And they did do a sound check between the previous Stream Deck and, of course, this new scissor key, and it does give you more of the clicky key sound as everybody talks about. And right now, the only people that have it are the beta influencers. That is my understanding on there. So we'll see how that goes from there. The other thing that it does have is the mount on the back. So now you can actually, a 1/4-inch mount on the back. So now you can attach it to tripods or mount arms or anything like that. I got more geeked out on the virtual Stream Deck options. So now you can actually put buttons on your screen on Mac and Windows. And I think that's going to be great for anybody that's got like touchscreen monitors like myself that have limited space on mobile rigs, just to be able to have a screen that has like hundreds of buttons at the ready.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so the noise is the first thing that occurred to me, and this is, if you could see my screen, this is what we're spending all this time talking about. It's a scissor button. My hope, because it'd be silly if this is really the announcement, my hope since day one of the Stream Deck is I want a keyboard made out of Stream Deck stuff. I mean, that to me all of a sudden is awesome. If my whole keyboard can change contextually depending on what I'm doing, and all the buttons are different and have different instead of overlays, all the buttons on the keyboard as just a different Stream Deck, underwhelming, as the others have said, and noise is the one thing you don't want when you're streaming.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I think it's a negligible improvement, because I've never faulted my Stream Deck for not having enough button travel. Reliability, with an elastomeric keyboard, which is what they had in there before, versus a scissor type keyboard, or remember the butterfly keyboard, low profile. And the problem is with the Elgato, because it uses an LCD behind it for the legends on all the buttons, which are changing all the time, I would think parallax viewing of that screen is going to be a little more problematic, because the longer the keystroke, the further away that LCD has to be from the top of the button. That means as you move off to an angle, it's going to cut off corners of the legend on that LCD on there. So I haven't tried it to see if that's the case, but it's bad enough with the elastomeric, and I think if they move it up with longer key travel, just means it's going to be that LCD legend's going to be further away and going to have more viewing problems with parallax. And people aren't, touch typing on these. Most people aren't touch typing on these Stream Decks, so I don't think the feel of the keyboard is that important an improvement over functionality. Now, if they make it more reliable than the elastomeric, that's good. But I tell you, I've had more problems with scissor type keyboards with contamination of cookie crumbs and things getting in there than any other type of keyboard, which can jam it up and gum up the works.
I go, Bill.
Really quickly, when I was a kid, I remember getting in the first elevator that had those finger sensing elevator buttons, and it was like magic. Oh my God, I don't even have to get my finger on the button. I wish somebody would create a modern version of that has a sensor that now unmutes or mutes, and then the button click, which I love for the tactile, it's either on or off, happens after that, so we can get truly silent mechanical switches. That would be lovely.
Yeah, I think that I feel like what's really odd about the software, the virtual software, both on the iPad and on the computer, is they feel like they have to follow this this idea of this little Stream Deck. Like, we're going to always give you the Stream Deck look, and I think part of it might be because, again, after using Mimo Live and being able to design my own interface, I'm like, why doesn't Stream Deck just let me make those buttons any size I want? Like, I can just build a graph of the buttons. I can just make some buttons bigger and put pictures in them and make other ones smaller. And again, to get back to what Jeffrey was talking about, the touch screen, it'd be a lot more useful if I could like build out things and organize them and have space in between them and have bigger buttons and smaller buttons. And you can do that custom, but if Stream Deck did it, it would be pretty exciting. The problem is no one would buy Stream Decks anymore. like that. I think that's their big challenge, is that if I suddenly was able to design my interface to look the way I wanted it to look, I would never look back, on Stream Decks, because it's just, you want to have all that functionality. I have 4 of them here. But if I could design that interface for anything, I would jump on that pretty quickly.
The virtual ones, the virtual buttons, actually you can resize.
You can resize each button?
You can, you can actually set it up for 1 button, 6 buttons, 80 buttons.
No. But what I mean is I want each button to be different sizes.
You can create, I did this, I called it the Tetris wall. So I created a whole bunch of virtual Stream Decks and made them like little Tetris characters, and then just stacked them up on top of each other. And then I can resize all of them.
But each button can be independently scaled.
Yeah, if you do it as its own virtual input, and you do 1 button, you can resize it big and small, and then you can have another one that's regular size.
Oh, but but that'd be all like different. You mean different instances of the same?
Exactly.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
like that would be.
But it can be done. That's
yeah. I'm just saying that they have this interface that all they got to do is just let us scale those buttons and put whatever we want in them, and it would be revolutionary. We'll see if they ever do that. Next question.
Daniel Patridge in Rochester, Minnesota. Roland just announced a new customizable control app, Venuset, for their switchers. It includes pan, tilt, zoom controls and record controls. Currently only iPad, but Mac and Windows in Q3. Great idea, and he's got a link to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it is interesting. I haven't had a chance to look at the whole video yet. But it lays out a control surface, and it interfaces with a number of different hardware platforms. One interesting thing is it lets you put your video. Let me see if I can find a sample of it. Put your video inputs into the buttons themselves, so that you can kind of combine the control and the multi-view in a single panel with live video appearing in the controls. Saw that somewhere there, so that you can see live video of who you're switching to and what they're doing before you switch to them. So it's interesting. Like all touch interfaces, a lot of people, professionals, don't like to have a touchscreen interface because they want the tactile feel. They can put their fingers on the buttons and can react a lot quicker when the director says ready to 2. And they don't have to look down and go, oh, where did I put 2 today? Oh, yeah, it's at the top. You have to look at it, and it requires visual confirmation that you've actually touched it and selected it, as opposed to just feeling that click on your finger.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Jacksonville, Florida. What is pink noise used for in an AV environment like a house of worship?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Pink noise is a full bandwidth signal that goes across the entire audible spectrum. This is a noise that it has equal energy between each octave in the range. This differs from white noise, wherein the energy is equal across every single frequency. Pink noise is only equal within octaves. It's useful in a variety of sound disciplines as a means to be able to use as a reference. You know what a pink noise signal sounds like, so that means you can use it to measure and refer to when you're, for example, if you want to measure the frequency response of a microphone, all throughout the signal chain from a microphone all the way up to your loudspeaker system, you can measure how your loudspeaker responds in terms of its frequency range, and you can use it as a tool to calibrate again all throughout your signal chain, both in terms of EQ and frequency, and also level. So you can say, for example, if you have a target loudness level for your house of worship, it's typically measured in dBSPL, either C weighted or A weighted. You can aim to hit that target the level when you're putting out pink noise at a specific reference level, and push your loudspeaker system and processor so that you hit those targets.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia comes up next. What's the panel's opinion on CapCut, the app for Mac? And he's got a link there to it.
Go ahead, Bill.
So this was really one of the first nonlinear editors, I guess you could say, that was really aimed at social media as opposed to broadcast. Most of the other editors for video came out of the broadcast industry, and they were built on a virtualization of traditional switchers and things like that. CapCut kind of came out of China when TikTok and those kind of social media platforms were becoming huge, and it's optimized for that kind of creation. It doesn't have some of the features of the big NLEs, but it has a lot of features, particularly in terms of graphics overlays and things like that, that work really well on phones and other things. So the people who grew up using CapCut really like those features, and it's very efficient for them. We've talked a lot here about the fact that it comes out of a company in China, and everybody's a little bit concerned that maybe the powers that be in China are kind of watching what happens on there and have more control over that than people would like. But it's become very popular among young people who are doing social media videos.
Yeah, it's owned by ByteDance, and it is the issue really is that it asks for an enormous amount of resources. So it wants all of your photos. It wants this is a Trojan horse. Like in it, and it's very powerful and very impressive, and it does a lot of great things. But this is a Trojan horse asking for information about you, and just be clear that I think it's a great app. I would never put it on any of my devices. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. I've seen guitarists like Ola Englund, founder of Solar Guitars, The Haunted, and so forth, use Logic with a click track to program MIDI patch changes for his guitar pedals. How do you know what MIDI message to send? Capture it via a MIDI monitor, or use RTFM, or both?
Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, so a lot of these pedals have a companion, a plugin that you can run on DAWs to trigger the change in patches within the pedals. Others, most of them, run on very simple MIDI CC messages that you program on a MIDI track in your DAW. And yes, you would indeed refer to the documentation to know exactly what CC messages to send for what functionality.
And if you if what you're watching here, you want to participate, you want to ask questions, vote on questions, chat about questions, of course, you can go to Makana. If you don't know how to get to Makana or Discord, just go to officehours.global/join, and we'll start sending you emails, and those will have links to Discord and to this show. Next question.
Our next question comes from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. What causes this glitch in the video? This is from an F1 streaming app. Notice that the graphics aren't affected since the broadcast is cut and graphics are added in the UK. Is this just a transmission buffer error? And he's got a link to the YouTube video so you can actually watch the glitch.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, this isn't, depending on if they do have a buffer in their RF transmission chain, especially on the receiver, It may be related to buffer. And these types of, at this level of production, you typically would not need a buffer. But certainly, as your transmission is having to switch transmission paths with its diversity system, be it frequency diversity, antenna diversity, receiver diversity, or most likely a mixture of different diversity technologies, there would be a timing difference, especially since with RF systems you don't really have a gen lock in there, so you would have timing differences there as you switch from antenna to antenna, from receiver to receiver, and there is usually a system in place so that this switching does not happen while a camera is live. But if the camera or the transmission reaches its limits wherein it's no longer able to reliably receive and transmit the video, the system will force itself to do the switch, and that line going through it is the system switching between antennas, between receivers. And we see that in the video that Craig showed, that there was indeed, it absolutely reached the limit of what it can do with that signal path, because we saw a glitch there. So it forced it to go through a different transmission path with its diversity systems, and that's the wipe that you see.
And this is what we're talking about here. For those of you watching, you can see it here, where it's a drone shot, which is going to be more challenging. You see that little glitch there, and drone shots are more challenging than others. We have hardware boxes called TVIPs, which will analyze those frames as they're going through. You've got this one. You've got two paths coming back to a TVIP system, and it will basically. If it sees one degrading, usually it tries to do it seamlessly, but this one probably happened very subtly. I don't know if that's what they're using here, but that's what we would use. And as soon as it starts to degrade, it immediately jumps to the other signal to make that happen, as Mickey said. But that's the specific piece of hardware that we've used in the past to flip between two signals if one starts to degrade almost immediately. This was a glitch that happened. I mean, when you're talking about a drone over a very large space, the idea that you get any transmission regularly is pretty amazing. To Mickey's point, that a lot of times we build mesh networks. We did one at the Sonoma Raceway, which is not very far from my house, and in there, I think we had 8 antennas that were passing. Now, in this case, we were passing from the cars themselves, and so the cars were at 150, 160 miles an hour, and they have to jump from antenna to an antenna, and the goal is to do that as seamlessly as possible. Go ahead, Courtney.
But this one looks a little strange. Usually if you see a glitch, they'll cut between the two inputs, but this has a horizontal wipe, and usually a glitch or transmission error, since the data is normally sent vertically top to bottom, it's weird. But you said it was from a drone, so maybe because if it's a drone, maybe the sensor is sideways inside that drone so that the data is being sent horizontally.
Or that the transition built into the hardware is to go sideways instead of up and down. Yeah. Like it could actually be set that way.
Pretty hard, but yeah, you see that horizontal wipe, and the offset between the two sources is apparent in that as that wipe moves across the frame from left to right. That is true.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this would most likely, I doubt for Formula. I haven't seen drones been used in Formula One races. It's most likely a chopper, and most of the transmission systems that they use for downlinking would be actual HEVC based systems, as opposed to like a standard analog microwave system or a proprietary digital system that's actually compressed signal. So perhaps how they're doing the decoding at the receive side might be left to right for some reason.
Yeah, and I don't know what they do at F1. I know that there's a raceway near me, as I said before, and I've definitely seen drones there. So they're covering them. They're using them in some places. They just never go over the track. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Charleston, South Carolina, up next, has some MIDI show control issues with QLab and the ETC EOS family of consoles. This is the first time I've ever seen any issues with that. Does anyone have any pointers for troubleshooting QLab 5?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I'd first try to see if the MIDI messages are actually making its way to the the console, to your lighting console. I don't know if you're using actual, MIDI over copper, or if you're using something like RTP MIDI, but you can use a piece of software like Pocket MIDI to take a look at what the QLab is spitting out, see if it's actually going out there. You can do a loop back with your MIDI messages with this, or if you're actually using MIDI over copper, like a 5-pin DIN connector, you can put a MIDI interface there with another computer and see if the MIDI messages are making its way there. Same deal with RTP over RTP MIDI. See if you're receiving the MIDI messages at the other side of the network. If it's RTP MIDI, perhaps you're running into switching or firewall issues that may be blocking the RTP packets from going through.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez in Jacksonville, Florida. Buyer's remorse after 2 weeks with the Yamaha DM3-D. Now the Allen Heath Qu-5D drops and blows away the competition. Should I trade up for the newer, shinier model?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd be curious as to what makes you perceive moving to a Q5D as a trade up. For myself, like I value first of all sonic fidelity, audio fidelity above all in a mixing console, because if the Q5D has double the input channels and double the mix buses and the outputs, but if I'm losing audio fidelity compared to a DM3D, what's the point? So for me, like if I can get the job done with a DM3D, I'd stick with that. And if I need more channels, I'd rather move up to a DM7 or even a DM7 compact, or if you want to go Allen Heath and Avantis, or at the very minimum an SQ series. But being very familiar with both these product lines, I would absolutely rather go with a Yamaha desk, with the Yamaha quality head amps, the Yamaha quality audio processing, and the build quality, as well as after-sales support.
Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. How do you use the voiceover tool with record and monitoring in the newly released Black Magic Davinci Resolve?
I go, Jeff.
Yeah, so this is interesting. This is it's probably similar. Bill has described how he works, but yeah, this is just when you're in the edit pane, for example, instead of going into the full DAW interface and everything else, it just brings up, here's a spectacular image of it, very impressive. This just lets you bring up in place a little recorder to record something. Now, where this actually really is interesting is the new AI voice generation in 20 is not based on text, so you can't do text to voice. But what it can do is convert one person's voice to another person's voice. So if I'm doing a session, let's say with Courtney, and we don't catch anything, and then there's just like one little flub, it's not worth even bothering Courtney for, and he just pronounced Jeffrey Powers wrong, I can do a quick little recording of how it should have been said, and as long as I have built or let it generate a model of Courtney's voice, now I can convert what I just recorded into exactly the way I said it, but in Courtney's voice. And so that's where this is interesting.
So we can get Courtney to say, I love Macs so much. They are amazing. Steve Jobs is a genius. Bill Gates had no idea what he was talking about. What?
As long as we can build a model of it, I can take what you just said.
If only we had samples of Courtney talking for hundreds and hundreds of shows. Yeah,
so that's exactly how it worked. I could take what you just said and now have it in Courtney's voice.
We're working on it.
Fredo already turned me into an evangelical preacher. So
well, I think we're going to have to. We'll take a screen capture of Courtney. We'll put him on Apple's stage, having him talk about how much he's really moved on to Mac. Okay, we're working on that.
We just need one of those other things that syncs the mouth movements up to the
exactly.
voice, you know?
Exactly, we'll be set. Go ahead, Bill.
What could possibly go wrong with all of this technology? A couple of things I wanted to say. First and foremost, the only thing that surprises me is how much they aped what Apple did with Final Cut. I guess it was 11 years ago with the voiceover module in that. It's taken them a while to get around to it, but it's a very useful thing. I use it almost every day, and so good for the people who use Premiere, or not Premiere, for DaVinci Resolve in terms of having this function. The other thing I am concerned about this, and this is one of the areas that I'm most worried about in terms of what AI is doing for us, because everybody can kind of intuitively understand that if that's possible, then the scofflaws out there are going to start making it very hard to tell the difference between a phone call coming in from your kid at college saying, I need, $150 wired to this address or something like that, and the reality of that person, particularly if it gets so fast that people can speak in to a rolling conversation and have what comes out the other end in real time ape the vocal inflections of somebody else. That's going to lead to a lot of confusion potentially, because we know that marketers are going to suddenly, they're not always the most responsible people.
I mean, this is all coming. I think that it's important, and I've said this over and over again. I think what really is the problem is we won't believe anything. Like because of marketers, I don't pick up my phone ever. Like if you're not in my address book, my phone doesn't ring. It doesn't have any, I don't even know that you existed, and so I think that's where things are going is that people will just keep carving themselves into trusted environments. And it'll be much, much harder to get into that process. I think you're going to see trusted environments and known, we have a lot of information of not necessarily you identifying yourself, but you guaranteeing that you're a human being, that you're that human being, so on and so forth with our phones and so on and so forth. I think that's coming. Next question.
Next question comes to us from David Brady in New York City, and David wonders, my local ABC affiliate, OTA, that's our over-the-air reception, sounds like the speakers are out of phase. Is there anything that I can do?
I go ahead, Courtney.
Call your local affiliate and complain. Yeah, there's one way. I found this many times with, nobody's paying attention at the local affiliate when they're plugging stuff in and somebody's, broke a cable and rewired it out of phase and put it back in the line. In the pipeline. And so, the encoders that are trying to do, 5.1 encode, 7.1 encode are now dealing with a channel that's out of phase. And so things get dropped, things cancel out. Try putting your receiver into PCM stereo mode and make sure that it's in the correct mode for the type of whatever streaming device or over-the-air reception is your television is set to. Because if your television is set to receive, 5.1 Dolby and you only have 2.1, make sure the standards line up, because there you're going to hear problems because the decoder can't deal with the data that's coming in for 5.1 and things will sound out of phase. So make sure that your sound system matches up with what your receiver is set to deliver.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Exactly was what the Courtney said would be the first step that I would do. Make sure that my monitoring system or my beat chain is accurate. That way I know what my judgment is truly what's being received. If it's truly out of phase, or most likely out of polarity instead of out of phase, I would listen through some programming and see if it happens in the entire transmission, or if it's happening only with certain ads or certain programs or certain sources that they may be using. Perhaps if you just heard it in a live hit from someone reporting from the street, maybe there's something wrong specifically with that part of their broadcast, as opposed to having something wrong with the entire transmission. See if it's where the issue is, and then you'd be more informed in case you do want to reach out to them and report what you're hearing on your system.
Next question.
Next question comes from Steve Holden in London in the UK. I've come across two types of audio engineer. One who wants amps at full, and those who optimize pregame, place channel faders at unity, and masters close to the -10 to unity. Then the amps are raised to suit the level required in the venue. What is correct?
I go Jeffrey.
So this is how I learned how to do sound back in the day, and that is really a back in the day type situation. I think a lot of things have changed since then. I got completely confused on an X32 because there were no pre-gain faders anymore. Well, they were all virtual at the time, and everything was already preset for that. You had to make adjustments from there. Plus the fact that if people are doing in-ears, there's no reason to have amps on stage. So trying to turn those amps away, get them off stage, and then mic them from there is always something that I strive to do when I'm working with a band. So yes, it is a known way. Is it the best way for today? That's the real question. And I think the answer is, unless you're working on old systems, then no.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm a little confused as I'm assuming this is a live environment because you mentioned a venue. So first off, in live mixing, there isn't really a mastering stage per se. Yes, you do use similar tools that are used in mastering. Sometimes you have compressors on your mix buses and so forth, but it's not a mastering stage. And when you say close to -10 to unity, -10 what? Are we talking dBFS here? Are we talking about VU? Are we talking about RMS or loudness? -10 what exactly do you mean? Because -10 peaks, sure, that's completely understandable for a live environment, but -10 what do you call this, bluffs, that's unbearably loud. So I think it would be good to know exactly what you mean by -10. In a nutshell, you want to have a nice healthy what do you call this, healthy signal for your mix going out of your mixing console, of course with enough adequate headroom should something, a loud sound occur, or a louder unpredicted sound occur through your system from your artists or your presenters. And set your system processor and your amplifiers down the line so that you read the target loudness and SPLs you want for that specific room and that specific production. For some venues and some shows, you might want to average around 90 to 100 dB SPL C weighted for the average of the production. Sometimes for a louder show, it might be you might want to go 105 dB SPL. It varies, but the important thing is that at a reference level, we were talking about this earlier with pink noise, at a reference level at your desk, you're hitting a target SPL rating for the venue or for the show.
And John Wallace said that typically when you're doing festivals and have a short load-in times, you set your amps to 100 and run the buses to normalize the sound. It isn't ideal, but it's a way to reach the desired loudness levels. But you risk your amps and speakers by overdriving. Courtney?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
No.
I've run into those guys that set the power amps to 100%, and it depends on the speakers and how many you've got them, what their impedance is and how many you've got paralleled and what the load is. And the problem is when you set the power amps to 100% and then gain stage from backwards from there, the problems, as Mickey said, is somebody pulling a guitar plug halfway out and hitting 60 hertz buzz that is delivered through the system at 100%. That's going to fry some of your speakers. So you're less in danger of doing that if you don't raise your amps to 100%. You set unity level and then bring your amps up to the desired sound pressure level for the room, and you'll have plenty of headroom. But so that you won't either be bottoming out the speakers or frying them in case of an accidental overload of some sort.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly. You want your system, your loudspeaker sound system, to be set for the level that you want. And also on systems, if you have a good systems engineer, you would have protections in the systems processor to prevent overloading your amplifiers. You would have stages of compression and limiting there. And even if you don't have a systems processor, modern digital desks have the capability to do systems processing right on the desk itself on your mix bus.
Next question.
Rena Dapapopoulos in Scituate says, we have networked 12 Panasonic 12K projectors. This was a little challenging. How would you do it better? Why and how would you do this? And how would you get it all to work with LED walls and other large monitors and TVs around the rooms?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how I might do it better, specifically because I don't know how your team has done it to begin with. But in terms of getting to work better, the first thing that comes to mind for me would be gen locking. If you're depending on what projectors you're using, many of them have gen lock inputs, as well as LED walls and large. Commercial displays also have gen lock inputs in them. So locking them in terms of sync means you will not have variations in terms of what frame is being displayed at the same time in case you're pushing out the same frames to all the displays.
Next question.
Peter Moore, Auckland, New Zealand's back with his thoughts on the new EHX Oceans Abyss reverb effects unit, trailing reverb for each patch, apparently. Thoughts? And he's got a YouTube link to it there.
I don't know if we have a lot of reverb specialists here on the panel today. Unfortunately, Chris Galen is not here, so he'd probably have more opinions about it. But I think you might have stumped us. I don't think we have anybody there, and I'm not a reverb guy. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. What does the panel think of the next generation Allen Heath Q range? I'm very impressed and with the redesigned user interface, integrated Dante and gain/feedback assistance. And he's got a link to the Allen Heath site.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I have not had my hands on the new generation of Q series from A&H, but based off my experience with prior generation, the first generation, it's really, I think there are much better options out there in terms of audio fidelity. I'm very not impressed with their analog circuitry, their head amps, especially when it comes to transients. It seems to kill the transients and flatten them off quite a bit. So it's very underwhelming to listen to, especially if you're mixing music through it. The Dante integration, I'm surprised that they only put the 16x16 Dante card in it. Would have been nice if they put an actual like user replaceable card so that you can pick, a Brooklyn chipset with 64 channels of Dante in it. And the gain and feedback assistants are really of not much use for someone who knows what they're doing with the mixing console.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia says, what should podcasters use instead of CapCut?
Go, Jeffrey.
Well, it really depends on what feature that you're looking for inside of CapCut, because CapCut does have a lot of different features. Like, for instance, if you want the text editing type feature, then you have something like Descript or Riverside FM that you can use to edit that way, do some AI editing. A lot of the, like DaVinci and Adobe and Final Cut are really working on getting those features inside of their their software editors as well. So you can definitely look at them. And of course, if you can't afford, of course, DaVinci is free. If you're not affording the main version of Adobe, their essentials have the ability to do some of this AI generation inside of there as well. So, and of course, Final Cut is working on it as well. So those are some options. But like I said, if you want to go online 100%, then look at something like Descript or Riverside.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I would say it is, first of all, very important to distinguish whether you're doing audio only or video. If you're going to do video, then if you want to be more technical, free version of DaVinci Resolve is extremely powerful. It's not going to have the newer AI tools and some of those things, but a lot of stuff comes with it, and you can probably not even need any external plugins. However, if you're not looking to get that technical, I can't recommend Descript highly enough. The advances they've made, even just over the past year, is really amazing. You can do everything, and more so than Riverside. Riverside really took the lead in terms of being able to do double-ended record and get a local recording, so you're not dealing with all the Wi-Fi glitches. Tentatively, it looks like their replacement, so not the old Squadcast, but now Descript has their own native version of that recording. Seems to be pretty good and stable. It goes right into Descript. It's your same payment plan and everything. And Riverside doesn't come anywhere close to the editing side of Descript. So you'll get your video, animation, captions. It can now cut and build clips from it. It can edit based on ChatGPT style prompts. Extremely powerful for the non-technical folks.
I go, Bill.
And the other thing I wanted to note is that the big programs, the NLEs, generally all have packages you can buy that do the graphics element of this. A lot of them have things that can do the audio processing elements that are built into things like CapCuts. These big monolithic programs were there first, and they've seen that there are a lot of people who want to do this kind of stuff. So they have a lot of add-on little packages that are inexpensive that you can add a lot of this kind of functionality and make it look about the same if you want to go that direction, as opposed to changing platforms entirely. It's not 100% alike, but most of those capabilities are out there.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I agree with a lot of what everyone has said here. The the bigger, the DaVinci Resolves, there's a very steep learning curve in all of that. Although they do have the cut page, they have some easier access to all the power of that particular editing system. But if you're doing simple stuff and you kind of want to take advantage of AI tools, Microsoft has something called Clip Champ or Chip Clamp or Chimp Clamp. I don't know. You can always mess up the name of it. Clip Champ. It's very hard to say.
Clip Chip?
Clip Champ. And it's built into Windows 11 now. I think they're including it. It has a lot of AI-powered tools that you can use for editing audio, video, and for streaming persons. It is available as an app in Windows. It's also available in a browser-based version and an iOS version, so it runs on your Apple touchscreen interface. So take a look at that. I think it's a free download, and try it out. Take a look at that, and it's a simple interface, and it allows a lot of those AI tools that people have gotten used to, text-to-speech and editing based on speech, etc. So take a look at ClipChamp.
Next question.
Mark Nesseth in San Antonio, Texas says, I've been asked to help a community hockey arena add some hockey game audio to the concession area. Do you think a shotgun mic would work for this, or would you recommend a parabolic setup? Thinking I can mount it around 50 to 100 feet from the ice.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, 50 to 100 feet. I'd be really curious as to why they want essentially the FX mix being pumped across the concession area, because that would just be noise being pumped into the location. I'm curious if what they mean is more of, say, the possible commentary that's happening in the venue. That would make more sense to me than just blasting noise to people's ears while they're buying a refill of their drink. But if it is indeed an effects mix that they want being blasted out there, parabolic microphones tend to sound quite thin. So you typically want a mixture of shotgun microphones to capture the bass level of the effects spread across the arena, of course, so that you only fade up what you need at any given moment. You don't want a whole bunch of microphones just capturing noise as opposed to actual gameplay effects. up at the same time. You just want to fade up what you need. And then on top of that, add parabolic microphones to capture a little bit more brighter detail aimed directly at the players. If you had to choose, if I had to choose between parabs and shotgun mics, I'd go with an array of shotgun mics any day. But I'd first question why they want to blast noise to people's ears at the concession area. We've
actually seen this in an arena that I worked in, where a lot of the effects and the crowd and everything else was passed into it. And the reason for that was that the concessions areas were so isolated from the space. When you walked away from the basketball area, this is a basketball game, when you walked away from it, it just got really quiet. Like, and then they'd have some music in there, but the problem is it just felt like you were in a different world. And so I know that they brought it back in. I think that for that basketball setup, I think they had 27 effects mics. So it was this weird mix of effects mics and crowd mics and everything else, but it was a special mix that was subtly put. It wasn't very heavy. It wasn't like you were hearing it like loud. It was just, it made you feel, and I didn't notice it until they mentioned that they were adding it. Like, it just felt like it felt like ambient when you walk in, until they turned it off as an example, so that we could hear it. And then we were like, oh, right. It felt really like a vacuum because there's just so much space between where it was. These new arenas, you get to the other side and you don't hear anything. And so that was I think that it was a really subtle effect that they added that was pretty effective, but it would not work with it was a lot of mics that were feeding that feed. It wasn't like a mic that was 50 to 100 feet away. It was like, I don't know, a mixture of 10 or 12 mics that were specifically mixed from the effects systems to capture some of the feet movement, some of the crowd, some of the baskets. It was and all kind of mixed together, and they were constantly working on it. Next question.
Next one comes to us from David Brady in New York City. Do you think this could come in handy for events like NAB or InfoComm? It's $2,900. It's the G1T4 M1N1 droid, and it's very cute.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
My answer is only if you want attention, because basically what this is a little droid that was created by this Piaggio Fast Forward. I guess they finally got the licensing from Star Wars, so they can turn it into a Star Wars droid. But you can get it without the wrap, of course. It really doesn't look like any type of R2-D2 or BB-8 or any other droid unit that we've seen in Star Wars. So, but you can definitely have it. It's got the ability to follow you, and this is where the problem might come in when it comes to like an NAB or InfoComm. People are going left, right, up, down, everywhere, and to have some little device that's trying to watch your legs and then have people pass through, I feel it could get really confused super fast, and therefore start following somebody else, and you're running for your droid. It does have some storage ability to it, so you could probably put some gear in there, but not enough gear to really do something like a camera shoot or anything like that. Maybe your laptop, maybe a couple other things, and it better have a lock on it as well, because somebody could come in and just lift it up and steal whatever's inside.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, those are interesting points. This is interesting. It's made by the company that makes Vespa scooters. That's what Piaggio is. So it's a nice form factor. I don't think NAB would be the best place for this. In fact, I think NAB would be probably the worst place to use it. But I could see this as being a shot across the bow of like pizza delivery services and things like that. A small robot like that in a small community delivering your lunch would probably do well. So they're probably just looking to support this and continue research on it, because this kind of small box style robot could end up being really useful in a lot of urban circumstances.
Good. Courtney?
Yeah, in my neighborhood, we have Surf Pro. We have these little delivery robots that are running around the sidewalks day in, day out. Have to avoid them all the day. They're crossing the crosswalks. This one looks a little strange. I think its primary purpose, I don't know if it's cooled inside its storage facility, but it looks like a beer cooler that follows you around at the beach. That really looks like its primary purpose.
For the alcoholic that has everything. For the alcoholic that has everything,
you never
a
have
beer
to go
cooler
out
that
for
follows
beer.
you around.
Yeah, it's just following my beer cooler.
Put sand tires on it. It'd be great.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think this is what on the audio side, A2s are 4 and camera utilities are 4 and entrance are 4. I wouldn't trust this to carry. I'm thinking from the point of view of like event coverage. I don't know if I would trust like a full like a bunch of like SLA Pelican batteries with this thing.
If what we do is valuable to us, to you, it's valuable to us. We're here. But if it's valuable to you, you can support us in a couple different ways. Of course, like and subscribe to the channel. You can also volunteer. You can go to officehours.global/volunteer. You can be on the panel, officehours.global/panelist, or you can give money to us, officehours.global/donate. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin up next. Any opinions on this line array that has motorized horizontal and vertical directivity steering? And he's got a link to it from PK Sound.
Now go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think it might be useful. The fact that it's steerable, it might be useful for installation, permanent installation in a multi-purpose space. Though in most occasions, productions bring in their own PA system anyway. But yeah, it might be useful like for a house system that might be tunable depending on how the room is configured.
Next question.
Carlos Rojas in Washington, D.C. has this one. Frustrated with the audio mix on the Sirius XM version of NBC's broadcasts. Nats and music overpower the announcer track. Would this audio summing issue lie on the contribution side or the XM ingest? I would like to communicate with a solution.
Mickey?
Yeah, similar to David Brady's question from earlier, I would first verify your monitoring system, how you're listening to it, and make sure that what you think, what you perceive that you're hearing is actually what is being received. Then with that, then I would not try to communicate a solution. Just communicate to them what you think you're hearing and the issue that you think you're hearing, and leave it to them to find a solution if they do agree that there's something wrong with the transmission.
Yeah, I think it's probably going through a legalizer or a compressor for XM, and it's pulling things that were further away together. And that's probably what's happening there. Next question.
Rena Dapapopoulos in Situate is back with this. What can we learn from Bill Owen's retirement, and how will this affect media production and its culture? How will the pending sale to Larry Ellison affect media and the production landscape?
I don't know how much it's going to affect it. So Bill Owen was I believe the executive producer or the producer of 60 Minutes. After a lot of push back and forth, he decided to go ahead and resign, and some other folks from CBS are resigning. This is related to a lawsuit over editing last year with Kamala Harris that Trump brought forward, and so there's been a lot of pressure put on. There's a lot of pressure on the media right now. I think that in the same way that we shouldn't have been believing a lot of things that we saw there. I think the idea that that the media is somehow not unpartial or impartial has been an illusion. And so I think that thinking that it's going to get much worse or much different, that you just decide which one you want to listen to. So it's all entertainment, and so just understand they're not selling information, they're selling ads, and so they're I don't think it's going to make any real significant difference to what we see on 60 Minutes. Next question.
Harshi Trivedi, Daytona Beach, Florida, often a panelist here. Does a cable with a 3.5 to 3.5 millimeter male differ from a cable with one end with a 3.5 to 1/4 inch male cable using for headphones monitoring?
Go, Jeffrey.
Not really. So basically, I use these that will go from a computer into a mixing console that has a 1/4 inch stereo or TRS connection for there. I don't know how you're going to do it in headphones unless you're going through like a headphone amp or anything like that requires a 1/4 inch. But the other thing that you have to watch out for is the cables. Like for instance, you have TRS and then of course you have TRRS. If you're going from like the OWC docks, those are TRRS, and it'd be better if you had a TRRS connection going into a stereo. And then you have to watch the TRRS because some of them actually put the configuration slightly different because Android had different configurations from their phones in the past.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if you're talking about just a standard 3-pole, 3.5 millimeter to quarter inch, or 3.5 mil to 3.5 mil, speaking strictly about the cable itself, it's there's not much difference there. Actually, it's identical with how it's used, and better shielding on the cable would be better, would result in less possible interference, both with 3.5 mil or quarter inch. Of course, there are variations when it comes to the connector. A quarter-inch connector has more surface area that the male is in contact with when it's inserted into the female connector. But strictly with the cable itself, it's the same in this specific use case, just for unbalanced stereo headphone connections.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
And be careful what you're plugging this cable. If it is just a 3-wire TRS tip ring sleeve, into a tip ring sleeve female, be careful because almost all computers these days have combined mic input and headphone output into a single 3.5 millimeter TRRS connector, which supposedly is compatible with TRS for headphones. But if you're sending an audio signal out, this can create a problem because most of these computers that have a TRRS for input and output put a bias voltage on one of the rings of the TRRS, which is between 1.5 and 5 volts. Now it's DC, so it may not show up, but if you're using that just to send audio from one place to another and you have TRS cable plugging it into the TRRS jack that has that 5 volts bias voltage on it, it can create noise if you're going into a stereo system that, of course, is only looking for alternating current and not DC current coming in over its audio input. And this can create noise if there's any kind of contamination on the plugs. Anytime you turn the plug, you'll hear static noise because that's that DC making it across the capacitors that normally filter out DC on those audio inputs.
All right, next question.
Roz Humphrey in Comax, British Columbia. Good morning. Ambient recording soon. Rode Video Mic NTG to a 32-bit float Tentacle Track E. Ramp the mic gain to 16 or go low. High pass filter to 150 hertz.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. If you're gathering ambience, you really want to have both a microphone that is ultra quiet and ultra clean, as well as preamps and A to D conversion that is ultra quiet and ultra clean. You'll encounter a lot of ambiances where you need 60, 70 dB of clean gain to get anything that's usable. And I'm thinking here from a post-production sense. So I would advise saving up more or investing more on higher quality microphones and a higher quality recorder. Maybe look for a secondhand sound device, 702 or 744T. Amazing sounding preamps in those boxes. Look into perhaps a pair of Sennheiser 416 shotgun microphones, or maybe even a 418 MS microphone. When it comes to cutting effects, especially ambiances, there's rarely a need for mono ambiances for me. I do fill in some mono ambiances on the center channel, just especially for the M&E mix, where it's going to be localized, and the actual domestic location sound will be stripped off. But it's I very rarely use source actual mono effects for those. You don't need 32-bit float for ambiances. Absolutely not necessary. Again, look for a use sound devices 702 or 744T. And you do not want to high pass at the gathering stage. Just record it raw and then prep it for integration to your library later if you want to add, a high pass filter at 40 hertz or 60 hertz, whatever makes sense for you, or even again leave it raw in the library. But 150 hertz is extremely high. I would definitely not do that.
To everyone who asked questions for today, thank you so much. The producers out there, this show is run by the producers asking the questions. We don't have a plan other than to answer your questions. So thank you so much for asking them. We do answer your questions live every day. If we didn't get to all the questions, if you put them in through Makana, we'll send them back to your notes so you can find that little hamburger. If you did it through the QR code, we'll try to bring them back in and see if people vote them up tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Thanks to the panelists. It's always an amazing panel here to have the conversation. Great audio heavy discussion, not only, but heavy discussion here. So thank you so much for the panel for being here. We can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end. There is a team all over the world that gets up every single day to make sure this has happened. We've not missed a show since March 25th, 2020. Now, not a single day because of the producers showing up to ask the questions, the panelists here to answer the questions, and the incredible production and management teams that are here to make this possible every single day. So thank you so much for your contribution. Today, the Tlaloc Traversal, if we had done this in person, we would have traveled 48,000 miles, 78,000 kilometers, and that is 383 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Courtney, I think I'm going to be saying chip clip or
Clip champ. Chimp clap.
Clip
Easy
chump.
for you to
The
say.
outlawed chimp
How do we have
years ago.
Clip chump? All right, see you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Only on Windows.
No, it runs on iOS too and in a browser. So it crosses the platform, not on the Mac OS.